Hello, this is Ashish Sahu. In this video, we will take a look at how to deploy the resources required for the Azure Data Marketplace pilot for the publishers. This video is applicable to the pilot program only. To get started with the Azure Data Marketplace pilot as a publisher, you need to deploy Azure Data Share Service and a function app that configures the consumer deployments later. We have created an ARM template that can be used to deploy the required Azure resources in your Azure subscription. You can deploy this ARM template from GitHub directly or from your system locally. Let's start with the deployment from the Azure Portal. Visit this repo in your browser. Go to Deploy Publisher Azure Resources documentation link. And on this page, you can see the details about what this ARM template does and the various ways to deploy it. On this page, click on the Deploy to Azure button, and when prompted, please authenticate using an account that has contributor role assigned to it on the Azure subscription. Once you are on the deployment screen, you can select an existing resource group or create a new one. I am going to create a new resource group for this deployment. Now you need to select a location for your resource group and the location for the Azure resources where Azure Data Share Service is available. It is advised to select the same location for your resource group as well. Other parameters that you need to provide are prefix for the resource names. A Unix string will be appended to this prefix to prevent any conflicts with existing resource names. This setup also includes a function app which takes care of configuring the Azure resources on the consumer side. And you need to select an app service plan SKU for it. We recommend using B1 plan, but you can select another plan keeping in mind the number and the frequency of the consumer deployments that you expect to happen. You can click on Next and review your selection. If you are satisfied with your inputs, proceed with the deployment now. This deployment should be over in less than a minute. After the deployment is successful, you can take a look at the output section, which lists the information that you will need when configuring your Azure Marketplace offer later. Let's take a look at the resources that have been deployed. This is the Azure Data Share Service instance that allows you to share your datasets with internal and external consumers. We will set up a data share in the next video. We also have a function app that has the managed identity enabled for use in the Azure Marketplace offer setup. The function app source code that handles the consumer configurations can be seen here, and you can study the code to ensure it meets your requirements. We also have a storage account and an Azure App Service plan that are needed for the function app. Let's now take a look at deploying this ARM template from your system using PowerShell and Azure CLI. For this, I have already cloned the repo on my system. I will now change to the install/publisher-azure folder in the repo. Since we are using the same ARM template that we use to deploy the resources from the Azure portal, we are going to need the same set of parameters to provide from the PowerShell command line. We will also have to create a new resource group to deploy all these resources to. These are the parameters that we need to set. I am setting up the resource group name, the location that will be used not only for the resource group, but also for the resources. I am pointing it to the Azure deploy.json, which is our template file in the local directory. I am also using a resource name prefix and the app service plan name as the parameters that we will provide. The next command that we need to run is to create a resource group. After we have created the resource group, we need to run the new AZ resource group deployment commandlet to start the deployment of the resources using the PowerShell command line. This will take similar time that we see from the Azure portal. Similar to the output that you saw on the Azure portal, this commandlet also shows us the output that we will need when we are configuring our offer from the partner center portal. Let's try this deployment using Azure CLI now. Similar to the portal deployment and the PowerShell deployment, we need to provide the similar parameters on the command line using variables, and then run the appropriate commands to create a resource group and then start the deployment. Let's start by setting up a resource group name, followed by the location that we are going to use for the resource group and the other resources. This variable points to the deployment template, which is in the same folder. This is the resource name prefix that we are going to use for this deployment. And this is the app service plan that I'm going to use for the function app. This command creates the Azure resource group for us in the East US region. And now the as deployment group command on the screen initiates the deployment using the ARM template that we have been using for the portal as well as the PowerShell deployments. This is going to take about a minute to finish the deployment. As you can see, the deployment is now complete, and similar to our portal and the PowerShell deployments, we would also see that the output section provides the information that we will need while we are trying to configure our marketplace offer in the partner center. With this, we are now ready to move on to the next step and start configuring our offer.